It started like any other quiet afternoon at the Portland Animal Shelter. The air was filled with the sounds of families wandering through the aisles, their voices a gentle murmur and the soft, constant barking of the dogs, children pressed, their faces to the kennel bars, their eyes wide with wonder and excitement. The staff answered questions with warm smiles, offering guidance and encouragement to those who were looking for the perfect companion. It was just another day filled with wagging tails, hopeful beginnings, and the smell of puppy chow. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary until one small voice cut through the calm. Max thought it was barely a whisper, but it cut through the noise of the shelter like a bolt of lightning. A young girl, no older than 12, had dropped to her knees in front of kennel number 9. Her small hands, shaking with nervous anticipation, reached through the bars. Inside, a German shepherd stood frozen, ears twitching, eyes wide in disbelief. For a moment, there was silence, as if time itself had held its breath. Then, suddenly the dog surged forward, letting out a low, guttural whine that quickly turned into a desperate cry, a sound somewhere between a bark and a sob. The noise rippled through the shelter like a wave. The staff paused in their tracks. Visitors turned, curious, their faces shifting from polite indifference to surprise. Even the other dogs seemed to quiet down, as if understanding the significance of the moment. The girl was crying now, her forehead pressed against the cold metal gate as the shepherd clawed gently at the bars, his tail whipping back and forth in a frantic rhythm. He made a series of strange, desperate noises, as though trying to form words, as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing, and neither could anyone else. Because moments like this didn't happen often, especially not with this kind of intensity, not with this much pain or recognition. This wasn't just an adoption. This was a reunion, and no one had expected it. Least of all, Lily Thompson, who had spent the last 2 months living with the heart-wrenching belief that Max, her dog, was lost forever. Before Max, Lily's life had been filled with love, but also an overwhelming sense of quiet. Her parents were good people, kind, hard-working, always doing their best to provide for her. But their schedules were packed to the brim, and the days often passed in a blur of phone calls, late-night meetings, and half-finished dinners. Lily never doubted their love, but love doesn't always fill a room the way presence does. And so, even though her home was warm, she often felt cold inside. She never complained. She learned to keep herself busy, reading, drawing, or simply staring out the window while the hours ticked away. But loneliness, like an invisible whisper, crept into the silence. Then one day, everything changed when they brought Max home. Was just a few months old, a bundle of awkward energy-long paws, oversized ears, and eyes too big for his face. His clumsy, exuberant gallop made Lily laugh so hard that for the first time in a long while, she forgot what loneliness felt like. That first night, Max cried until Lily snuck out of bed and lay beside him on the kitchen floor. From that moment on, they were inseparable. Every morning, Max walked her to the door, and every afternoon, he was waiting with ears perked and tail wagging. In the backyard, they chased sunbeams, and inside, they built pillow forts. When Lily talked, Max listened. And when she didn't, he stayed beside her, a constant presence in her life. Her parents noticed the change in her. Lily smiled more. She slept better. She asked fewer questions about why they were always so busy. Max had filled the quiet spaces of her life with something gentler, something more comforting. To Lily, Max wasn't just a dog. He was her best friend, her companion, her home. And for a while, it felt like nothing could ever take that away. But life, as it often does, doesn't always knock before it enters. Sometimes it barges in uninvited, unexplainable. One morning, Lily woke up with an ache in her legs. By afternoon, she was limping. By evening, she could barely lift her arms without pain. Her joints throbbed, her muscles weakened, and she grew pale, quiet like her body was slowly giving up on her. By nightfall, everything began to unravel. Lily was rushed to the hospital, her condition worsening by the hour. The pain in her limbs turned to stiffness, then sudden weakness. She couldn't walk without help. Her hands trembled when she tried to hold a spoon. The doctors ran a battery of tests, more tests than she could keep track of, and words like autoimmune, neurological, and unidentified markers floated through the sterile air of her hospital room. No one could explain what was happening. All they knew was that Lily needed time and treatment. Her parents dropped everything to be by her side, sleeping in uncomfortable hospital chairs, living off vending machine coffee, their eyes clouded with exhaustion and fear. They tried to stay calm, to smile, to assure Lily that this was just a bump in the road. But behind closed doors they cried. And back home, Max waited. He knew something was wrong the moment Lily didn't come downstairs that first morning. He paced outside her bedroom, sat by the front door for hours, waiting for her. When her scent began to fade from the sheets and hallway rugs, he grew anxious, then restless. He refused food, barked at the silence, and stood guard by the window each night as though expecting her to walk through the front gate. The bond between them was deeper than anyone could understand, and Max, loyal, intelligent, and sensitive, had no way of making sense of her sudden absence. The house grew quieter. Max grew more unsettled. And Lily, lying in her hospital bed, missed him more than she could say. But everyone told her that healing had to come first. At least, that's what they told themselves. As the days turned into weeks, Lily's condition stabilized, but her recovery would take time. She remained in the hospital under constant care while her parents juggled work, hospital visits, insurance calls, and their growing fear for their daughter. But there was one more weight they hadn't figured out: how to carry Max. They loved him. They knew how much he meant to Lily. But with 12-hour workdays and late-night drives to the emergency room, Max's needs had slipped further and further down the list. He was still a young German shepherd, intelligent, active, emotionally sensitive, and it was clear he was suffering without Lily. After much hesitation, they made a choice. They asked Lily's uncle to take Max temporarily. He lived on a farm just outside the city, with a fenced yard, years of experience with dogs, and he promised to keep Max safe until Lily came home. It seemed like the best possible solution under impossible circumstances. Max was quiet during the drive. He pressed his nose against the car window, watching the familiar streets slip away behind him. When they reached the new house, Max hesitated before stepping out of the car. He sniffed the air, paced the driveway, and stood staring in the direction they had come from. Her parents left, their hearts heavy, telling themselves it was only for a little while. But just 1 week later, they received the call. Max was gone. The gate had somehow come open during the night. Maybe he had pushed through it, or maybe someone had opened it. No one knew. He had disappeared into the woods behind the property, leaving no trace, no paw prints, no sounds. The family searched for him. Flyers went up, calls were made, days passed. Hope faded, but Lily wasn't told. Lying in her hospital bed, surrounded by IV poles and the hum of quiet machines, she asked about Max every day. Her parents kept the story simple. "He's fine, sweetheart. He's staying with Uncle John. He misses you." And Lily believed them. She smiled softly, her eyes closed, imagining Max curled up by a fireplace somewhere, safe and warm, waiting for her, just like she was. No one knew where Max had gone. 1 minute, he was lying near the garden gate, and the next he had vanished. No barking, no sounds, just absence. And Max, in his silence, endured more than anyone would ever fully understand. By the time he was found, weeks later, he was nearly unrecognizable. A man driving along a rural highway spotted him limping near a drainage ditch. Max was soaked, skeletal, and shaking. He didn't bark. He didn't resist. He just collapsed at the man's feet. The local shelter that took him in had seen neglected dogs before, but something about this dog, this silent skeletal German shepherd, made the staff stop in their tracks. He didn't growl. He didn't whimper. He simply collapsed on the examination table as if every ounce of strength had been used just to get there. His ribs were lined with long, thin scars, old enough to have scabbed over but still fresh enough to sting. Patches of fur were missing from his back and neck, as if ripped out rather than shed. One ear had a small tear. His legs were scratched and raw, as though he had clawed his way through thick underbrush or worse. His paws were cracked and his nails worn down to the quick. There was no collar, no name tag, no microchip, just a faint scar where a chip had once been. The staff exchanged glances. They didn't need to say it aloud, but they knew. This dog hadn't simply gotten lost. He had been taken, held, and at some point he had escaped. What Max couldn't explain, he carried in his body. The stiffness. When anyone reached too fast, the twitch in his eyes when doors creaked, the way he pressed himself into the corner of his kennel as if bracing for impact. But underneath all that fear, something stronger burned. Memory. The scent of clean laundry. The sound of a girl's giggle echoing through a hallway. A hand that used to brush behind his ears just so. A backyard full of sun and tennis balls. And so he waited. Every morning, Max would rise slowly, walk to the edge of his kennel, and stare past the gate, always in the same direction. Not barking, not begging. Just waiting. The day Lily was discharged from the hospital, the sun was bright, the kind of sky that made people say, "It's a good day." And for a while, it felt like it could be. She was stronger now, walking on her own again, eating without help, laughing in soft bursts that hadn't been heard in weeks. Her parents packed her things with quiet relief, knowing she was finally coming home. But little did they know, so was Max. Exchanging exhausted smiles that said, "Maybe we made it through." On the drive home, Lily stared out the window, her fingers nervously twisting the bracelet in her wrist. There was only one thing on her mind. Max. She imagined the way he'd come bounding down the hall when she walked through the door. The way his paws would scramble on the hard wood floor as he rushed to greet her. The way his tail would wag so wildly. It might knock over the umbrella stand again, but when the car pulled into the driveway, the front porch was still. No eager bark, no shadow at the window, no Max. She walked into the house slowly. The living room felt smaller, quieter. It echoed in strange ways as if even Thier was waiting for something or Samionetto come home. She called his name once, then again. Silence. Her parents exchanged a glance. Her mother stepped forward first. "Sweetheart," she began softly. "We need to tell you something." They told her everything. How Max had been sent to stay with Uncle John. How the gate was found open. How they searched for days. How he just disappeared. Lily didn't cry, but her breath caught like air had been knocked from her chest. Something inside her folded in silence like a book left open in the rain, its pages curlingenward, unread and unfinished. She nodded once, then turned and walked to her room. Closing the door behind her. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at the floor. It was like coming home to a story that had ended without her. That night, she placed a bowl of water by the back door, not because anyone asked her to, but because some habits don't go away when someone you love disappears. 2 months passed. Lily still placed the bowl of water by the back door every evening. Her parents noticed, but never mentioned it. They hadn't stopped searching. Every weekend they drove to new neighborhoods, followed up on online posts, checked with local shelters and rescue groups. It had become part of their routine, a quiet, unspoken promise that they wouldn't give up. That Saturday was no different. "There's a shelter on the east side we haven't checked yet," her mother said gently as they pulled out of the driveway. "Just a quick visit." Lily didn't ask questions. She didn't get her hopes up anymore. Hope had begun to feel like a trick her heart played on itself, but still she came along. The Portland animal shelter smelled like disinfectant and excitement. Barking echoed from fuels. Volunteers smiled. Children pointed. Lily walked slowly behind her mother, hands in her pockets, eyes on the floor. She passed kennel after kennel. Some dogs barked, others pawed at the gates. A few sat in quiet corners, eyes full of old stories. She wasn't listening until something made her stop. A low, trembling sound, not a bark, not a whimper, a whine, sharp and aching like a note struck on a piano slightly out of tune. Her eyes flickered toward kennel number 9 and froze. A German shepherd stood perfectly still, his ribs showing beneath a dull coat. One ear slightly torn, his eyes sunken but alert, locked with hers. Max didn't move at first. He blinked, tilted his head, then took a single tentative step forward. Lily dropped to her knees. "Max," she whispered, voice cracking. The dog let out a gasp that turned into a yelp, then a whine, then something raw, almost human. He lunged toward the bars, pressing his body against the gate, tail thrashing gunkentry. Lily reached through the cold metal, sobbing now as Max frantically licked her fingers, pawed her arm, collapsed onto the floor like his legs could no longer hold the weight of relief. Chesmeled through tears, overwhelmed by the miracle in front of her. But as her hands moved gently over his fur, her fingers traced the thin ridges of old wounds, patches where his coat had yet to grow back. She saw the hesitation in his eyes, the way he flinched ever so slightly at sudden movement. And in that moment, something shattered softly inside her. It wasn't just happiness. It was grief, too. Grief for what he'd injured alone. She didn't know who had hurt him or how, but the scars on his body cut deeper into her than all the needles and ives he had faced in the hospital. Because pain you share with someone you love always hurts more than your own. Around them, the world fell away. It wasn't reunion, it was return. The shelter staff had seen a lot over the years. Reunions, tears, the kind of joy that can't be staged. But this one was different. For weeks, Max had barely reacted to anything. He ate just enough to survive. He didn't play. He didn't respond to toys, treats, or voices. He sat quietly at the back of his kennel like he was waiting for time to pass or for something he couldn't name. But the moment he saw Lily, something switched in. The shelter coordinator, a kind-eyed woman named Teresa, stood nearby with a clipboard in hand. She lowered it slowly as she watched Max press against Thebers, whining with a sound she'd never heard before. "You know her, don't you, boy?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Paperwork was expedited," the micro-Kipskar explained. Photos matched. Teresa didn't need much more convincing. "He sires," she said softly to Lily, wiping away a tear. "He always was." The drive home was quiet. Max sat in the back seat, head resting gently on Lily's shoulder. She kept her hand on his back the entire way, afraid that if she let go, even for a moment, it would vanish again. When they pulled into the driveway, Max perked up. He sniffed fear through the window and let out a low, familiar sound, almost a hum. As the car door opened, he didn't bolt. He stepped out slowly, cautiously, as if making sure the ground beneath him was real. Then he saw the house and he ran straight to the front porch, tail high, body trembling with joy. He pawed at Theodore like he'd never left, then turned it around, waiting for her. Lily followed, eyes full of wonder, no questions, no explanations, no. What happened? Just one unspoken truth shared in a glance between girl and dog. "You're home and so am I because some bonds don't break. They bend. They stretch."